How's it going, everybody? I'm Drifty from Driftwood Gaming. Welcome back to the 2018 version of Let's Make a Game, where we create a sim RPG using the RPG Maker MV engine. This one we're calling Natural Explorers. We're going to talk about some of the comments we had real quick, and then we'll jump into the game. Keith J. Davies suggests that we add Yanfly's More Currencies plugins for certain materials like lumber and ore, and we use those for an alternate currency. I do plan to add Yanfly's More Currencies plugin. However, I'm planning to make an armorer building or an upgradable building that creates armor components, and those armor components will be the additional currencies to purchase armor. That's what I plan on using it for. We'll see what happens in the future. Mina Kill says, if we do decide to make seasons in the game, we should stop the trees and farms from producing or become less effective. An idea that I was thinking when I read Mina Kill's suggestion was maybe make a random chance. In winter, there's a much smaller chance that the item actually is given to the player once the timer completes its set amount of frames, or we could just toggle it off. We can encapsulate the entire timer event with another condition saying if season is not equal winter, or if is winter switch is on, then don't run the timer. Mina Kill also says that we should look at requiring coal or logs to power some buildings in winter, and add some buildings that only work in winter to circumvent winter being a bad time of the game. Great suggestions, Mina Kill, keep them coming. I'm going to scroll up so you guys can stop and pause the video if you would like to see some of the changes that have been made. Lots of people have commented, and I keep their comments here. Devin Scott did suggest that we add some sort of treasury. I want to point out another good comment that Devin Scott made. This is something I might actually do pretty soon. Have some of the villagers trapped in the dungeons, and rescuing them will set up the shops in towns. A lot of games use this rescue from the dungeon and then they become available in the town. Terraria does this. Just lots of games do this. It's a great idea. Thank you for the suggestion. I'm continuing to scroll up, and then we'll save our document. Thank you guys for the comments. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. All right, so last episode we created the event for the blacksmith. I didn't actually show that working, which was probably good because there was a lot of bugs. I had to fix those bugs. Now he should be working perfectly fine, and we'll look at the event real quick and go over it one last time before we go into the common event. He'll be wandering around. We might put him in the dungeon. When we find him, we'll either rescue him or we'll pay him 1,000 coins, and he'll set up his shop at the pond. Once he's set up at the pond, he'll have his bucket here, forge, air furnace thing, and his anvil and his hammer, playing an animation right on when the hammer hits the ingot that he's smelting. This was a little time consuming to get right, but it's very rewarding because I love how it's showing an animation. This little sparkle particle effect, it's a show animation. It's not actually part of the sprite. These are Panda Maru sprites, and they're beautiful, and I love them. Thank you, Panda. But this animation I created in time, got just on the right spot and got it timed just right, and I'll show you how I did that. We talked to the blacksmith. It says we've got the basic forge set up and running. If we have 3 ore and a single coal and 50 coins, we can smelt it into an iron ingot. Should we get started? And we can tell him to get started. But let's say not right now, nothing will actually happen. If we say yes, get started, he's gonna let us know if we have all the required materials. If we don't have enough money, he'll tell us we don't have enough money first. If we do have enough coins, then he'll move on to coal. If we don't have enough coal, then he'll tell us we don't have enough coal. Let's buy, let's say 10 of them, that'll be fine. We tell him yes, well, he'll check to see if we have the ore. We don't have enough ore to get started. Now we have everything we need, and he gets started. If you talk to him again once he's started, the message will change. It will default to no continue smelting. The player doesn't accidentally cause the timer to stop. It won't consume items if we do stop the timer, but you see that he did finish. I have it set to 18 seconds right now. I was planning on making it every 3 minutes, but I'm probably gonna drop it to 2 minutes so we can stop and start this event as many times as we want, and it's not actually gonna consume any items. It will only consume the items once the timer has been finished and we are awarded an ingot. We'll check to see if those items are working. We've consumed 6 ore, 2 coal, and we have produced 2 ingots. It seems to be working perfectly fine. Let's look at the gab window, so I'll wait around for it to show up again. There it is. We get a new sound effect. It lets us know that we produced the ingot. It also lets us know how many ore and coal we have remaining. When we create the GUI, I'm planning on putting coal and ore at the top, or maybe on the side, that you can just see how many of each resource you have. But this is a maybe, because if we have too many resources, it's going to be a little bit bit overkill trying to pay attention to like 20 items that you have on the screen. I also think it's a good idea to give the player the option to set up their own GUI. I'm looking at using SRD's Super Tools engine to set up a GUI that way because it's going to give me the ability to let the player design their own GUI. Maybe they want to see coal, but they don't want to see how many ore they've got, or vice versa, if it's compatible and everything works. I haven't tested it out yet, but I was looking at it and I think it would be a great solution for adding a GUI. Let's look at that event. This is the first event. The blacksmith is here. At the top of the event, we control a variable setting player money to the amount of gold the party is holding. We show a message, we'll show a choice. We do a condition. If the player says we want to set it up, we'll check to see if they have the gold. If they have the gold, we'll take it and we'll let the player know where the blacksmith is going to be, and we turn on a switch. Otherwise, you say you don't have enough money. This was a bug in the last episode. It showed items. I was copy pasting the wrong code. Once the switch is turned on, this becomes an invisible event. It disappears. It's really just to have him go over here. I like the idea that Devin had, putting him in the dungeon and making the player find him in the dungeon to get the smith. It was a great idea. Once the switch is turned on, all of these events will now appear because they have the switch requirement of switch being on. So I didn't show you beforehand like walking up there, but if you walk up here before purchasing it, this will be empty. There'll be nothing here. All of these events are providing the image to the map. They're not on the map from the beginning, and they require this switch to be on. They won't even be here until you pay him the money to set it up. This is the event that starts the common event. This just lets the player have the forge set up here. The common event will actually start with when the timer starts, because the timer is the thing that controls the parallel process in the common events. But once the switch has been on from purchasing it, that gives you the access to the event that starts the common event. A similar process is happening inside this event. We're checking the player's money. We're letting the player know what it's going to cost to start the operation, giving the player a choice. If they say yes, we check to see if they have all the items. If they have all of the items, then we're going to play an animation and start the timer. Hit the self switch A. Otherwise, you don't have enough ore, you don't have enough coal, you don't have enough money, or not right now, it does nothing. When the self switch A is on, we prompt the player with stopping the parallel process. We'll default the choice to no, don't stop the process because I want to keep making stuff. But if the player wants to, they can say, yeah, just stop the process. And all this will do is turn off the timer and turn off self switch, which will put it back to the first page of the event. Once we've started the timer through this event, the common event will fire because it's a parallel process requiring the timer switch be on, the basic forge timer. Now here's the event that I was talking about yesterday at the end of the video. If gold is greater than or equal to 50, then another conditional branch. If we have coal, we set a variable to the value game data of the number of ore in our inventory, and we check that variable with a conditional branch. If that variable is greater than or equal to the number we need, which is 3, start the timer. So unless we have all the items, don't run the timer and consume a parallel process. But if we do have all of the items and the switch is on, then start the timer. Here's where I'm going to have it 2 minutes, which would be 7,200 frames. But for debugging, I take off a digit of 10. It'll run 10 times as fast. If that timer is greater than or equal to the number of frames you want to pass, at this point it'll be 12 seconds. Once it's checked to see that we have all of the things and the timer starts to run, then we're going to take away all of the items at the same time and then award the item. We're going to get rid of 50 gold, we're going to get rid of the coal, we're going to get rid of 3 ore, and we're going to award 1 iron ingot. Now we'll make another conditional branch checking to see if the player is on the right map. If they are on the town map, which is town map ID 3, I'm using a tracker event. I've showed this in other episodes, but it's a player tracker that starts at the beginning of the game, and it sets the value of player map ID to the map ID of the player. This will let us know at all times where the player's at, what map they're on. We're using that in a lot of events, almost all of our timer events, that we don't play animations on events that are on a different map. We check to see if they're on the right map. If they are, then we're going to play an animation on the right event, and we're going to do a plugin command for Yanfly's show icon balloons plugin. We need to also show the right balloon and on the right event. I need to actually update that. This is event number 22 as shown in the top ID colon, and it shows the number. I need to update the event to number 22, and I need to get the icon for an iron ingot. We have to pick an icon, not an item icon. So let's go to item number 13 and see the icon number 861. So we'll go back to the common events and modify this to say 861, show the icon balloon 861 on event 22. Now it'll show the iron ingots. Regardless if they're on map ID 3 or not, we're going to control a couple of variables so that we can let the player know how many they have remaining. It's important to control these variables after you change the items, otherwise it'll give the player an incorrect reading. Then we're going to prepare the gab sound effect. I created a new sound effect. So this is a very short half a second sound effect. actually it's like a quarter of a second. I got a wooden table and I set down 4 bars of chocolate very quickly, like that. And then I normalized the audio. I put a filter, an AM radio filter. Basically, it was an EQ. I just equalized it to get more of a metallic sound out of it by taking out some of the dynamic frequencies. And we ended up with that sound effect. We prepare that sound effect and the gab text. We let the player know that they have just produced item 13, and we feed the player the data we just stored in variable 27 and 29. We show the icons appropriately. We're storing the item count of ore into variable 27, and then we're showing the item icon of ore, letting the player know we have this much ore left and we have this much coal left after producing 1 ingot. We force the gab so that it shows all that, and we set the timer back to 0. Much simpler than the mine timer. Very easy to do the basic forge timer event. And in the future, I plan to encapsulate these gab windows with another conditional branch, which checks a switch to see if the player has toggled the notification window on or off. Let's see if the icon balloon is working now, because I had to update that. You can see at the beginning here, there's nothing right here. There's no forge. So until we find the blacksmith or pay him, that stuff won't be there. But once we do, oh, I need to show you the animation too. But first, I want to make sure we have that set up right. So let's buy the stuff. We already checked to see if it tells us the right stuff. It will tell us we don't have the coal. It does check for the coins. It does check for the ore and whatnot. But once we have all the items, we start smelting and we wait 720 frames, which would be 12 seconds. We should see an animation, an icon balloon, and a gab window pop up. There it is. We got the animation, the icon, and the gab window notification. Boom. I like it. Let's take a look at how I set up this animation for every time the hammer smashes on the ingot, we get this little sparkle animation. So this was controlled by an external parallel process event on the map. This is going to require that the forge be purchased, so it won't actually start showing the animation until all the other events appear once we pay the blacksmith or rescue him. And I have a wait here that took me a little while to figure out. This animation will appear once we have the switch turned on. This first wait is to synchronize the show animation with the character stepping animation. In order to animate this thing, this is Panda Maru's artwork, which is stepping through this event here, 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 here. And if I'm starting it with this hammer raised, then I needed to add some sort of weight. I could have got around that by starting with this one, but I didn't think about that till after I already got it synchronized. So I started with the hammer raised, and it's going to put him in speed and frequency of 2 and normal, 3 and 3, actually 3 and 3, speed and frequency of 3. You can change the weight and the timer on the parallel if you want him to hit it faster or slower, so it's very customizable. I set the options to stepping so it'll cycle through the image, and the animation, the first page is going to synchronize it so that they start at the same time. I had to kind of guess a certain amount of frames and then check it. Once I've got the animation to start playing, as soon as this hammer hits down, then I knew I had it timed up right. I would do a wait to show animation, and then once I had it timed up right, I set a control self switch A and then made a new page which waits a different amount of time. This is the number of frames it takes for the full animation to play from his hammer raises off the ingot, goes into the sky, and then back down onto the ingot. That entire process is 71 frames. Well, it's actually a little bit longer than 71 frames because I had to count the number of frames inside the animation. If you're playing a longer animation, it'll take longer for it to finish that animation and then start the parallel process again. Once you learn how to do the process, you can guess a number and then be like, nope, the animation's playing too fast, add more wait frames. Nope, the animation's playing too slow. Between every time it stops and starts, so reduce the number of wait frames. And you keep messing with that number until you get it just right. So you want to design your animation the way that it's supposed to look first, because if you change the animation, you're also going to have to change the timing, right? So I designed a very short animation just like that. And once I had the animation synchronized and then timed correctly so that it would play at the exact time that the hammer would strike the ingot, then I went into this and I adjusted the Y value, and I kept adding and subtracting to the Y value until the animation played exactly where I wanted it to be. And that got the animation to play synchronized right off the bat. So the first time it plays, it has a 36 frame wait after we start the event. That will synchronize it from the hammer in the sky landing to the bottom of it. 71 frames after the end of the animation for the hammer to land. So that's how we got that animation effect on top of the anvil. Now that we have a way to produce iron ingots, I need to create the next crafting station that's going to let me create pickaxes so the player doesn't have to buy them. That will entail another common event, but also a setup event somewhere on the map or in town. I previously discussed how I wanted to have the crafting stations in town, but all of the gathering stations outside of town, like in the world map. Since this is going to be a pickaxe crafting station, we could design a building. If we don't have a doodad for the building that we need, we can draw the building inside the game using the tile set, take a screenshot of that, export that as a PNG, and then draw that entire building as a doodad. If we don't want to do everything like we did right here, you may not want to use this process, wiring each part of the animation of the tile set for the switch, because it can be very time consuming if you have a giant building you want to draw. We can instead make that building one singular doodad and then draw that doodad if a switch be on. Maybe we'll do something like that. So I'm going to zoom in one for one, but I need to get rid of my grid lines if I'm going to take a screenshot of this. We don't have a grid line drawn through it. In order to enable or disable the grid lines, you want to click on Tools, Options, and then you'll see Map Grid. And you can have it show between whatever number of horizontal or vertical tiles you want. Just uncheck it or check it and it'll appear or disappear. I want to create this building as one complete building as a doodad. I'm going to zoom in one for one, press print screen. Once you've got a print screen of that image, you can go to Photoshop or GIMP or several other image editors, create a new document with the resolution of however many screens you have set up, and press paste, Control V. Now it's going to paste both of your monitors or all three of your monitors, and what you can do is zoom in with Control Plus and select the image that you want to draw as a doodad. Make sure you don't have any outside edges, otherwise they will only be that outside edge when you draw the doodad. I'm not going to draw the little plane step that I'm using as a step or any of the grass tiles on the edge. I'm just going to get the building itself and copy that. I'm going to put this on a new image. It's 240 by 240. Paste that, delete the background. And I want to make this divisible by 48 by 48 on X and Y. If I have 240 divided by 48, that's a perfect match, 5 tiles by 5 tiles. So if you do this and you're 1 pixel off, you want to resize the image by going to image size and changing it to pixels and set this to anything divisible. You don't have to make it 48 by 48, but I recommend you do. And you want to save this as a PNG file. I'm going to put this in my doodads DG underscore folder. Now that we've got that Tinkerer's House 01, I'm going to remove this from the map. We can jump inside the project, go to where we want to place it, press F10 and place the doodad. Tinkerer's House 01 will now show up where you want it to be. You can place it down wherever you want, and we can set it down right here. But before we do that, I'm going to press T and I'm going to require a new switch be on. I haven't created the switch, so it's not there, but we can always edit our doodads. I'm going to press right and place this doodad right there, hit escape and save and close. We can create the switch that requires this to be on and then press F10, edit doodad. So let's do that very quickly. I've created a common event that's going to be used just for temporary stuff. I don't plan to actually use it for anything in game. It's just going to be here to like create switches and whatnot. This is going to be Tinkerer's building. We'll call a switch called Tinkerer's building and we'll set that to on, and I could actually delete it now because I just needed to create that switch. That's it. Now when I go back into the game, I can press F10 and edit. If you accidentally clear your doodads, you can just cancel and close. Be careful to cancel and close if you accidentally clear all your doodads. Press F10, edit doodads, and we're going to edit the Tinkerer's house. Go down to where it requires a switch and select the Tinkerer's building be on. If this switch is isn't on, this building is going to disappear. As soon as we accept our settings and save and close, this building is going to disappear because we don't have that switch on yet. We save and close, the building is now gone. We'll also need to set up some sort of region restriction to stop the player from walking on them. In the next episode, we're going to set up the Tinkerer's building, the interior maybe, set up the region restrictions so that the player can't walk there. We could also let the player walk here if the building's not there if we use events in this location that will check to see if a switch is on, and if a switch is on, we can create a move event or a transfer event if the player activates it in town. So the player can walk here if there's no building here, which we'll probably do it that way because I like it better, it sounds cleaner. We'll make it so that the only way that the switch can be turned on is when the player cannot be in this area. So we can do a transfer event for it, we can just set up the switch from a different location. There's a number of ways to control that so the player won't get stuck when the switch gets kicked on and this becomes unwalkable. Like the player won't just immediately be stuck inside of a building. Leaving a comment below if you have any suggestions to add to future episodes. And that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy this style of content, please let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. If you want to support me on Patreon, that's highly appreciated. Patreon.com/driftwoodgaming. If you want to come hang out and chat with us, we have a Discord link in the description below. We'd love to see you. Come hang out with us. Remember to stay awesome, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.